Question 4. Sarah was studying the relationship between rainfall and humidity in the UK. She takes a random sample of 11 days from May 1987 for liqueurs from the large data set. She obtains the following results. Sarah examined the rainfall figures and found these quartiles. A value that is more than 1.5 times the interquartile range above Q3 is called an outlier. Show that R equals 20.6 is an outlier. So we're talking about this value right here. Show that is an outlier. Okay. An outlier is anything beyond Q3 plus 1.5 times the interquartile range. So let's find out what that value is. 2.4 is my Q3. The interquartile range I can find by doing 2.4 minus 0.1. And all of that into the calculator equals 5.85. Okay, so is 20.6 an outlier? Well, it's definitely bigger than 5.85. So since 20.6 is greater than 5.85, it is an outlier. Be careful to make sure that you state this. Just finding the 5.85 is not enough to show that you know what to do with it. Finish with a sentence. Since 20.6 is greater than 5.85, it is an outlier. All right, so we found this outlier. Give a reason why Sarah might include the outlier, and then give a reason why Sarah might exclude the outlier. Well, the outlier was a piece of data that we found. Just because it's a large value, is that enough for us to decide that it's not going to be included? I'm going to go ahead and say, so since it was one of the data points, it should actually be included in the data, regardless of if it was extremely large or not. Okay, it could also be argued that this may have actually been an error that was made when the data was being input into the system. So for that reason, it could be justified as being excluded. These outliers can be argued both ways as to whether to include or to exclude, and it might actually take a little bit more investigation to determine and decide whether or not to include your outliers. Okay, so Sarah decided to exclude this day's readings and drew the following scatter diagram for the remaining 10 days, giving interpretation of the correlation between rainfall and humidity. Okay, so here, yes, it looks like there may be positive correlation, but it's not enough just to say positive. That would be stating the correlation. An interpretation, I need to link humidity and rainfall. All right, so here's my interpretation. As humidity increases, rainfall increases. Now that is interpreting the positive correlation. The equation of the regression line of R on H for these 10 days is R equals negative 12.8 plus 0.15 H. Give an interpretation of the gradient of this regression line. Okay, well, the gradient is right here. It's the 0.15. Okay, once again, it's not good enough just to state the gradient. We need to interpret the gradient. The gradient is how one thing changes as the other one does. So for every extra 1 of H, R is going to increase by 0.15. More formally, okay, so for each percent that humidity increases, rainfall increases by 0.15 millimeters. I just went back to check what was the unit for humidity, it was percentages, and what was the unit for rainfall, it's millimeters. So I can incorporate that into my response. For each percent that humidity increases, rainfall increases by 0.15 millimeters, and that's going to be worth all of the marks. So next we're asked to comment on the suitability of Sarah's sampling method for this study. The sampling method was to take a random sample of 11 days from May 1987 for liqueurs, which is just one place in the UK. She was meant to be studying rainfall for the entirety of the UK, but she's only chosen one place to take measurements from. How do we know whether or not that's going to be representative? Also, she's only taken 11 days out of the whole year 1987. I think she could take a lot more readings in terms of the different days, so we get a spread of the whole year, and a lot more different places in the UK. Okay, so Sarah's sampling method is not appropriate. That's my response to part 1. Comment on the suitability, and my suggestion to Sarah is that actually she needs to take more readings from more locations within the UK and on more than just 11 days. All right, 11 days is a very small sample size. She needs to increase that sample size to get a more representative sample for her study. So on top of that, she could have actually tried to use all of the data if she'd used a computer system to help her with the analysis. All right, so how could she have improved or made better use of the large data set, computer system, or just get more data? So be careful to be very specific about what you're recommending that she does. If you're going to be vague, you risk not getting what you deserve. A response like this that refers to more locations within the UK and for more days is going to be what you need to achieve all your marks.